Mr. Sergeant of Arms, invite the members into the chamber and closed doors. I hereby declare the House of Representatives of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee now in session. Will the members please stand? Will the visitors in the gallery please stand and remain standing through the Pledge of Allegiance? Representative Sherrill will introduce the chaplain of the day. Representative Sherrill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Today we have Bishop Dawson with us. He's been preaching the gospel for 30 years, licensed with the Church of God at Cleveland, Tennessee for 28 years. He began his pastoral ministry when he was 24 years old and has been the pastor of 4 Church of God congregations in 4 different counties in Tennessee: Grundy, Warren, Marion, and White County. Bishop Dawson lives in Warren County, where he was born and raised, and has been married to his lovely wife, Lori, for 33 years. They have a son, Chandler Dawson, daughter, Lakeland York, married to Kevin York, and they have 2 children, Renee and Reagan York. Bishop Dawson has been the senior pastor of East Sparta Church of God since October of 2015. Bishop Dawson.
Going to read some scripture today. Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. When I thought about that scripture, I thought about what Paul was saying here. And I thought about this chamber, of the decisions that are made here every week. Paul says that we have to make a rational response in response to God's mercy. I want to tell you, folks, God's been good to us. He's been good to this nation, and he's been good to Tennessee. And I know that all of us want America and Tennessee to be great and to be better than it always has been. But I want to tell you, folks, until God gets back in our life and in our land, we will not have the greatness or the betterment that we need. And I pray that when you cast your votes in this chamber, I pray that they will align with the will and the word of God. Because Proverbs 14:34 says, righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is reproach to any people. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we come before your throne with praise and thanksgiving for the many blessings you have bestowed upon us. We thank you, Lord, that we have this privilege to come boldly to you and receive your grace and mercy in our time of need. Now, Lord, I pray for each and every lawmaker in this chamber today. I pray for wisdom and direction from the Holy Ghost as they lead this great state of Tennessee forward. Lord, I pray that what is done in here would please you and not man, because your word declares that when a man's ways please the Lord, he even makes his enemies to be at peace with him. Now, Lord, I pray a blessing of Numbers chapter 6 over this house. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. And may the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Representative Sherrill will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Luke, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Roll call.
Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 93 members present.
Let the journal reflect that Representatives Dixie, Potts, Love, and Griffey are excused. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Welcoming and honoring.
Welcome and honoring. Representative Ramsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request that the Sergeant at Arms escort our guest into the chamber.
Mr. Sergeant of Arms, please invite and escort the guest into the well. Representative Ramsey, you are recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I request that the clerk read the resolution.
Mr. Clerk, please read the resolution.
House Joint Resolution 947 by Chairman Ramsey, resolution honor and commend Bob Trees Eyes for his service to the Tennessee General Assembly on the occasion of his retirement. Whereas it is appropriate that the members of this General Assembly should pay special tribute to those estimable legislative employees whose commitment to excellence and dedication to public service have brought untold benefits to the citizens of the state of Tennessee. And whereas one such individual is Bob Trees Eyes, who is taking his much deserved retirement after a distinguished career with legislative information systems, where he has held a position of network administrator for more than 2 decades. And whereas during his illustrious tenure, Mr. Trees Eyes has won the respect and admiration of the members and staff of the General Assembly for his exceptional assistance, hard work, and determination to answer their questions and dire calls for help with technology that serves the legislature. And whereas often referred to as King Bob by his coworkers, Mr. Trees Eyes possesses an unrivaled work ethic and knowledge base and has motivated and inspired his colleagues by supporting and pushing his team to become the best, both individually and collectively. And whereas the son of William Trees Eyes and Dorothy Trees Eyes, Bob Trees Eyes is a gentleman of varied interest. He loves sports of all kinds. He can explain the rules of most any sporting contest and has a collection of more than 800 board games, which he used to establish an office tradition of team bonding over board games. And whereas clearly deserving of respect and admiration and commendation of this General Assembly, Bob Trees Eyes has distinguished himself as a public servant of the highest order and should be specially recognized on this momentous occasion. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, the Senate concurring, that we hereby honor Bob Trees Eyes on the occasion of his retirement and extend to him our deepest appreciation for his service to the state of Tennessee. We send him our heartfelt wishes for a happy and fulfilling retirement and every continued success in his future endeavors.
Representative Ramsey, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would like to bring on the floor and say how appropriate it is that we recognize and honor King Bob Trees Eyes from LIS. It's very appropriate that we look at Bob today as his contribution and maybe the face of so many of our employees and friends in LIS, which they're not able to come on the floor today. That's understood. But these folks, I've been here for 14 years, and these folks were here before I got here, and they will be here after I leave. And we owe so much to them, and it's such a great honor to be able to work with them and go down to LIS and see a pretty friendly, well, a friendly face. And they don't make fun of us, and they don't tell us how wrong we were or anything else. They just take our mistakes and fix them and send them back. And I just want to say how much Bob's been my trusted friend and my favorite movie critic in the whole world. And I'm going to miss him on that part. These folks have been up here in the period of time that I've been here. They've had to take care of business during floods and tornadoes and a couple of years ago, a bomb. And they took really good care of us. And we didn't see the behind the scenes and the late hours and the nights. And so I want to say thank you to all of the people in LIS, and especially to King Bob here, for the folks that keep us online and take care of our constituents, sometimes even when we don't know about it. So I want to introduce Bob and have him say a few words.
Thank you, Representative Ramsey. It's been an honor and a privilege to work for you fine folks and the people of the state of Tennessee. But my work is adjourned sine die.
Mr. Speaker, if you would honor us with a picture, I'd appreciate it.
I think there were some people who want to have some comments. Representative Curcio and Sapicki, I believe. Nope. Oh, under welcome and honoring. I got you. Mr. Bob, Representative,
Yes, sir.
what was your request again?
Oh, I would ask that you would come down and take a
Oh,
picture
thank
with
you.
us, sir. Come forward.
We are under welcoming and honoring Representative Sapicki and Curcio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, Chairman Sapicki and I would like to welcome Murray leadership to the House this morning. Please make them feel welcome.
Representative Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Myself and Representative Zachary would like to make three people welcome today. The Hughes family. Martine Hughes, who's 15 years old, attends Catholic high school, and she just recently started a criminal justice club in her high school. Her parents, Special Agent Paul Hughes with the FBI, and retired Special Agent Danielle Hughes, which is her mother. Let's make them feel welcome.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like the membership to welcome my brother Jack, who's back in the back, to the body today. He is my brother who I'm in partners in the trucking business.
Representative Sherrill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On my left side up here, up at the gallery, if you would, welcome our folks from White and Warren County. It was the day with our preacher of the day. If they would stand, please make them welcome, please.
Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have two items under welcome and honoring today. First and foremost, I have a dear family of mine, Dwayne and Tammy Lambert. My uncle and aunt are in the back. Uncle Dwayne's been at the post office for a long time now, decades, and Aunt Tammy's been a school teacher for over 30 years. Y'all please make them feel welcome. And then, Mr. Speaker, as most of y'all know, on Monday night when we were on the floor, I got a text from my wife that said my son was in the ER. Turned out by about 1 or 2 o'clock on Tuesday morning, he had an emergency appendectomy. So he is without an appendix now. They did a fantastic job at Sumner Regional Medical Center. I just wanted to brag on Susan Peach and Sumner Regional Medical Center. We all go through issues like that in life where you have an emergency or a medical procedure or something like that. And I'm just grateful to have a really good high-quality hospital in my area. And I know we all fight for that all the time to make sure we got a good hospital in our community. So good job, Sumner Regional and Susan Peach. I sure appreciate y'all taking care of my baby boy, and he's healing up fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, if you will, help me welcome my friends from the Giles County Leadership Group up here in the top left corner of the gallery. Thank y'all for being with us.
Representative Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've got some folks in town today from the greatest county in the state, and that is Marshall County. Please help me welcome Ronald Robson, County Trustee Scotty Porch, Miss Elizabeth Jackson, Ray Swilson, Janita Darty, Mr. Jimmy Bass, and they have brought Leadership Marshall down. Thank you.
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'm going to give you a little bit of history that I think is important for today. In the 5th century world, there was a young man named Patrick. When he was 16, he got kidnapped in Britain and taken as a political prisoner to Ireland. He spent 6 years as a political prisoner in Ireland, and while he was there in prison, he met the Lord. When he was finally able to escape, he walked 200 miles to the coast of Ireland, was able to get on a ship and get back home to Britain. While he was in Britain, he felt a call in his life to go back to the country that had put him in prison for 6 years. He ended up going through seminary with the Catholic Church and became a priest and went back to Ireland. Now, what you need to know about Ireland, in that time in history in the 5th century world, it was basically a pagan country, a godless country for the most part. Very few people who were religious at all. He gave the best part of his life in that country, and still to this day, they are predominantly Catholic because of the love that he shared there. We celebrate St. Patrick. He's the most celebrated saint in the Catholic Church, and most of us have no clue why we celebrate him. And I just thought it'd be good for y'all to understand, we celebrate a man who was treated wrongly, who forgave, then came back and blessed an entire country. And that entire country today is still reaping the benefits of his forgiveness and his blessings. Happy St. Patrick's Day, y'all.
Representative Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just like to take this time to thank all members and staff of the Transportation Committee. Due to their hard work and efficiency, we close the Transportation Committee on Tuesday.
Representative Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is spring break in Knox County, and while many of our students go to the beach, the son of a legislator gets to come to the Capitol as he typically does every year. So I've got my son Tyson here in the back, if you could make him feel welcome.
Representative Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to recognize a good friend of mine who is on her first business trip covering our activities today. We all remember our first time we went out of town on business and kind of marked a plateau in our career. So I want everybody to give reporter Abigail Warren a big welcome from the Daily Memphian today.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. Mr. Speaker, my senior policy advisor, Jason Huff, his father fell the other day in the ice and ended up with a brain injury. He's in the hospital and ICU right now, doing better. And people have been calling and texting Jason and letting him know that they're praying for him. So I just want everybody to keep Jason and his family in your prayers as his father recover from this incident. Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members.
Thank you. Representative Sparks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, many of us had praying mamas growing up, and I see a lot of young people up here. Today is St. Patrick's Day. Well, I've had a praying mama for 55 years. She's named after St. Patrick. She's born at the foot of Edinburgh Castle in Scotland. Mom's been a strong Christian. She is Catholic. The story of St. Patrick that our chairman just mentioned is a strong story of forgiveness and faith. I want to encourage these young people I see up in the audience. There's a nice movie on YouTube. Just type up St. Patrick. God showed him in a dream to go back and minister to his captives. If that's not a God story, I don't know what is. So pull up St. Patrick on YouTube and watch it. Happy birthday, Mom.
Any further welcome and honoring? Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction to resolutions.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all resolutions properly filed be introduced pursuant to rule number 17 and placed on the consent calendar. Refer to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate joint resolutions congratulatory and memorializing.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all Senate joint resolution congratulatory and memorializing line on the desk be placed on the consent calendar pursuant to rule number 17.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Resolutions lying over.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all resolutions lying over be referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction of bills.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that House Bills 2,903 through 2,908 be introduced and passed on first consideration.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate bills on first consideration.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that Senate Bills 160, 958, 1,842, 1,935, 2,034, 2,055, 2,106, 2,325, 2,340, 2,454, 2,516, 2,535, 2,602, 2,797, 2,859, and 2,868 transmitted by the Senate be held on the desk pending the consideration of their companion House bills.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate bills on second consideration. House bills on second consideration. Petitions and memorials. Reports from standing committees. Reports from select committees. Calendars. Mr. Speaker, the House has a consent calendar.
Chairman Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of the consent calendar on third and final consideration in keeping with Rule 50.
Gentleman moves passage of the consent calendar, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, any objections been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no objections filed.
Anyone seeking recognition on the consent calendar? All right, we're voting on the consent calendar. All members in favor vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 89, no nays, 3 present, not voting.
Having received the constitutional majority, I declare the consent calendar passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the House is a regular calendar.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, if I may make a motion to take up item number 5 first on the calendar.
Proper motion, probably second. Any objection? Without objections, ordered. Mr. Clerk, call up the first bill.
Mr. Speaker, that's item 5, House Bill 2150 by Representative Hurt and others relative to Mega Site Authority of West Tennessee. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Hurt, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2403.
Representative Hurt moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 2403 without objection, so ordered. Representative Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2403 on third and final consideration.
Representative Hurt moves passage of Senate Bill 2403 on third and final consideration. Proper second. Mr. Clerk, call the first amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Hurt, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill makes 2 technical changes to Title 64, Chapter 9, which is the statute that was passed during our 2021 Mega Site Special Session. The first section of this bill makes a technical correction to properly identify the survey and surveyor using the proper industry standard. The second section of the bill clarifies that the authority is not responsible for providing water and wastewater services to the Tennessee College of Applied Technology on the Mega Site property, which was the original intent of the initial Mega Site bill from special session. The TCAT never intended to obtain services from the authority. Funding was not appropriated for that purpose, and it is more cost efficient for the TCAT to obtain the services locally or by using a septic system. And with that, I renew my motion.
Representative Hurt renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Clemens, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, sponsor. I understand this is an administration bill that you're carrying for the administration. And from what I understand, TCAT doesn't have any problem with the provision relating to TCAT. And I think they support that, and I don't have an issue with it. My concern is the language in subsection B above that makes the current law that we have and that we recently adopted when we did the Mega Site deal was it says the authority has the obligation and exclusive right to provide water services and wastewater services. Now we're making it discretionary. So my concern is, what are the guidelines that are going to steer the authority's decision-making process in who can tap into that and who can't? Because it seems to me like it gives them a great deal of leverage about who can come into that mega site, who can tap into water services and wastewater services. It also creates the threat of an environmental issue of just having septic tanks run rampant all over this entire property. I would hate for the authority, who I made no bones about, I have concerns about the extent of their authority in the legislation that was originally passed. This seems to just open it up to them, like on an ad hoc basis, decide who's tapping in and who isn't, and use that as leverage for certain purposes. So again, my question is, what are the guidelines for them to decide who can tap into the water services and wastewater services and who cannot?
Representative Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The change gives the mega site authority the right of first refusal to provide utilities. The mega site authority has legislative appointments, but they have the right of refusal to provide those utilities.
Representative Clemens.
Right, I understand that, but the bill is changing the language in current law that says the authority has the obligation and exclusive right to provide those services to say that they may provide those services, and gives them a great deal of discretion. So if somebody comes in there and they don't like the way they run their business, or they don't like how they treat their employees or how they classify their employees, or if their employees are potentially unionized or something like that, they can say, nah, you're not hooking into our wastewater. You're not hooking into our water services. That's my concern, those types of ad hoc decisions being made for other purposes. And so I'm looking for, what are the guidelines that are going to regulate their decision-making?
Representative Hurt.
The intent is for Blue Oval and other tenants to utilize the authority's utilities, but there might be a case-by-case situation like the TCAT where it doesn't make sense to connect the authority's utilities. So that discretion is up to the authority. The authority will continue to have that discretion.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I understand that. And when we passed this bill, I had a lot of reservations about the amount of power we were given to this. Very similar to municipal authority to a state authority running an entire big chunk of land in counties, affecting 3 counties primarily, and the entire economy of the state of Tennessee. So thank you for addressing my questions. We spoke about it briefly earlier. But I do have real concerns about there not being any lines there that prevent them from making a decision based on one factor or another. Thank you, Mr. Sponsor and Speaker.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2403 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Cheryl, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 82, 7 nays, 4 present, not voting.
Senate Bill 2403 having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed. Objection to motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that brings the House back to item 1. Item 1, House Bill 2357 by Representative Garrett, relative to domestic relations. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Garrett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2385.
Representative Garrett moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 2385 without objection. So ordered. Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2385 on third and final consideration.
Representative Garrett moves passage of Senate Bill 2385 on third and final consideration. Second, Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Garrett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, what this legislation does was brought to me by the Tennessee Bar Association. In a divorce setting, judges were required to split the marital assets and the marital debt. In 2022, there was a case out there that said he also had the ability to provide division of the marital debt. Believe it or not, that's not in statute. What this legislation does, it just codifies what the judges have already been doing according to case law since 2022. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I'll be glad to take any questions. Otherwise, I renew my motion.
Representative Garrett renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I know I'm out of order, so pause here for a second. But Representative Clark Boyd and I would like to welcome our DeKalb County High School Leadership Group and Ms. Donna Emmons and the sponsors that came along with them. So if you would stand so we could recognize you being here today. Welcome. Enjoy your day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Out of order. Any further discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senate Bill 2385, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
Senate Bill 2385 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed. I object to the motion to reconsider table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1917 by Chairman Whitson, relative to the Applied Behavioral Analyst Licensing Committee. Mr. Speaker, Senate Bill is on the desk.
Let the journal reflect Representative Hurt is excused. Chairman Whitson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1927.
Chairman Whitson moves to substitute and form Senate Bill 1927, properly second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Whitson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1927 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Whitson moves passage of Senate Bill 1927 on third and final consideration, properly second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Health Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, Amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Whitson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill is a clarifying bill brought to me by the Tennessee Association of Behavior Analysts. It seeks to clean up language to clarify the types of assessments that behavior analysts can perform. This is a compromise language agreed upon by the Tennessee Psychological Association and the Behavior Analysts Association. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Whitson renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1927 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays.
Senate Bill 1927 I received a constitutional majority. I hereby declare it passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2657 by Speaker Sexton, Chairman Kershaw, and others relative to sentencing.
Chairman Kershaw, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2657 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Kershaw moves passage, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Sexton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It requires TTOC to provide a forum to assist the court's estimation. Clarifies that this estimation shall not be the basis of any appeal. Move to adopt.
Chairman Kershaw, Chairman Sexton moves adoption of amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Kershaw, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is the transparency and sentencing bill to try to give victims better understanding of what the sentence will be at the time of sentencing. And with that, renew my motion.
Chairman Kershaw renews his motion. Any discussion? Representative Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question. There are a couple bills that do this. Am I right that this bill does not alter sentencing in any way, the bill you've got before us today?
Chairman Kershaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, if this bill passes and no other truth in sentencing bill passes, the effect will be the judge will give the victim the estimated time that the offender will actually serve. If all of the truth in sentencing bills pass, then this bill will also serve to just tell those victims exactly how much time the person will serve. So it's a transparency and sentencing bill.
Representative Stewart.
Right. I mean, the point of your bill is it just tells courts to tell people in the courtroom what the sentence is going to be, but it's not, this bill doesn't have any impact at all on the length of a sentence, on good time credit, on any aspect, direct or indirect, of how long a human being is incarcerated. That's correct, right?
Chairman Kershaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, that's correct.
Representative Stewart.
Thank you.
Representative Vogels.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to the sponsor. This is a great piece of legislation. We've recently had some bills come through Criminal Justice Committee, and unless you really dive deep into that fiscal note, sometimes it's staggering the amount of time we actually incarcerate people in this state for some of the most egregious crimes. I saw a fiscal note yesterday that said aggravated rape of a child, the average length of sentence is just shy of 21 years. So we would assume that's life in prison. They're not getting out. People are getting out sometimes, and we need to know these numbers up front, and everybody needs to be able to see that. So thank you to the sponsor for this piece of legislation.
Any further discussion? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 2657 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays.
House Bill 2657 having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed. I object to the motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1638 by Speaker Sexton and Chairman Todd relative to the state capitol complex.
Chairman Todd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 1638 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Todd moves passage, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
House State Government Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Keesling, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're going to ask you to move this to the Hill.
Without objection, roll to the Hill. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Finance Ways and Means Committee Amendment number 1 filed as House Amendment 2.
Chair Lady Hazelwood, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment rewrites the bill. I move to adopt.
Chair Lady Hazelwood moves adoption of amendment number 2, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 2 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that brings the House back to the heel of the amendments. House State Government Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Keesling, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We move to withdraw in favor of Finance Ways and Means Amendment number 1. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Todd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, what this bill does, it actually is a clarification bill. And as a member of the Capitol Commission and on behalf of the Speaker, I'm bringing this to just put some details into our code that specify that all activities, all fixtures, all activities on the second floor of the Capitol have to go through both speakers of the chambers. So that's all this does, and I'll be glad to take any questions. Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Todd renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 1638 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 71, 19 nays, 1 present, not voted.
House Bill 1638 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, item 5 has been previously considered by the body. That brings the body back to item 6, House Bill 2177 by Chairman Ramsey relative to testing equipment used to determine the presence of a synthetic opioid. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Ramsey, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2427.
Chairman Ramsey moves substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2427, probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2427 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Ramsey moves passage of Senate Bill 2427 on third and final consideration. Probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Kershaw, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1 is in the Senate bill. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Ramsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an administration bill from the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. It addresses the escalation of opioid abuse and fatal drug overdose in the United States, as well as consequently in Tennessee. The legislation was proposed by the Department's Statewide Planning and Policy Council, and it takes into account that in 2020, over 3,000 Tennesseans died from fatal drug overdoses. 66% of those were because of contamination of fentanyl found in counterfeit prescription pills, illegal opioids, and illicit stimulants. This bill would exempt fentanyl strips from the definition of drug paraphernalia in Tennessee law. The fentanyl strips are an inexpensive and tool that brings about two effects. They result in harm reduction as well as improving overdose risk behavior. So with that explanation, pending further questions, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Ramsey renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2427, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 82, none nays.
Senate Bill 2427, having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 685 by Representative Beck, relative to motor vehicle insurance.
Representative Beck, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 685 on third and final reading and final consideration.
Representative Beck moves passage, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
House Insurance Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Kumar, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Insurance Committee Amendment number 1 requires that the notice to drivers be delivered in a written format and signed by the driver. With that explanation, Mr. Speaker, I move adoption of House Insurance Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Kumar moves adoption amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Beck, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a gig economy bill, whereas if the employer does not provide insurance for the driver, that the driver has to be notified to check with his insurance to make sure that he's covered on a commercial endeavor. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Beck renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I guess I hadn't been out of order this year, so it might as well be now. I want to congratulate you on winning the Masters. Thank you, sir.
All right. Any further discussion? Oh, Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Beck, I didn't know, I noticed the chairman of insurance moved your amendment on this. I didn't know, are you two filming the sequel of Twins today, St. Patrick's Day edition, or? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right. Representative Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to the sponsor, with this legislation, like currently a small business owner may have, 4 or 5 vehicles that are in their fleet and they have motor insurance on those vehicles. Would this have any effect on that? Or is that, are we saying that that insurance currently does not cover those drivers? Or are these for those that are not named specifically on those policies?
Representative Beck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is for people who use their own personal vehicles in the delivery. This does not affect anyone who has any type of corporate cars or company cars that people use.
Representative Doggett.
Thank you for the clarification.
Representative Powell.
Move previous question.
Previous question's been called. Any objection? Just for the coat. Can you at least object for the coat? All right. All those in favor of House Bill 685 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 90, no nays, one present, not voting.
House Bill 685 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1663 by Chairman Russell, relative to highway safety. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Russell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1671.
Representative Russell moves to substitute conform to Senate Bill 1671, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1671 on third and final consideration.
Representative Russell moves passage of Senate Bill 1671 on third and final consideration. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
House Transportation Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Howell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as Senate Amendment number 1. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, Amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Russell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 1671 enacts the Hannah Eimer's Memorial Tennessee Roadside Safety Hardware Act. This act requires prior to the installment of a crash cushion or guardrail at the end terminal that the Department of Transportation receive all crash tests applicable to such cushion or guardrail in accordance with the testing standards established by the Federal Highway Administration. On November the 1st, 2016, Hannah Eimers died when a guardrail end speared into her car. This bill will keep Tennessee safer in years to come in memory of Hannah. Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Russell renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1671, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change your vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 90, no nays.
Senate Bill 1671, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2088 by Chairman White, relative to training schools. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman White, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2017.
Chairman White moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 2017, probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman White.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2017 on third and final consideration.
Chairman White moves passage of Senate Bill 2017 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Haston, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this bill, its purpose is to support the training of our Tennessee teachers. The state of Tennessee is currently home to 2 training schools, one the University of Memphis in the west and ETSU in the east. This bill, as amended, makes a few minor edits to clarify their role and function within the training school definition. The language is authorizing language and does not mandate our training schools to make any changes. It merely provides more LEA contracting options and supports the effective training of our Tennessee teachers. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman White renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2017 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member casts their vote, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
Senate Bill 2017, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2108 by Chair Lady Moody, relative to instructional materials.
Chair Lady Moody, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2108 on third and final consideration.
Chair Lady Moody moves passage, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
House Education and Instruction Committee Amendment number 1.
Vice Chair Lady Weaver, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I defer to the sponsor for a wonderful explanation. I move to adopt.
Vice Chair Lady Weaver moves adoption of amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairlady Moody, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Chairlady Moody renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 2108 has been to vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Lamberth, aye. Ms. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 90, no nays.
House Bill 2108 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2318 by Representative Jernigan and others, relative to license plates. Mr. Speaker, Senate bills on the desk.
Representative Jernigan, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2301.
Representative Jernigan moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2301, probably seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Jernigan.
I now move passage of Senate Bill 2301 on third and final consideration.
Representative Jernigan moves passage of Senate Bill 2301 on third and final consideration, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the first amendment.
House Transportation Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Howell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as Senate amendment. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Jernigan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this bill requires that the design of disabled license plates incorporate the same color scheme, base design, and details used on standard plates. Basically, what had happened was disabled plates are a different part of the code, and they weren't included in the budget to receive blue plates, and this bill will correct that. And with that explanation, I'll be happy to answer questions.
Representative Jernigan renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2301 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Hardaway, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
Senate Bill 2301 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion reconsiders table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1805 by Chairman Reagan, relative to the State University and Community College System Board of Regents. Mr. Speaker, Senate bills on the desk.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1724.
Chairman Reagan moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 1724, probably seconded without objection. So ordered. Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1724 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Reagan moves passage of Senate Bill 1724 on third and final consideration, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Government Operations Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Vice Chair Reedy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as the Senate Amendment number 1. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, rather than seeing the sunset bill like we usually see it on the consent calendar, this one had an amendment added to it at the request of the audit team from the Comptroller's Office. The Board of Regents is extended to 2026, which is their normal time, but this amendment clarifies that the number of members on the board and it be expanded and allows the meetings to be held and live streamed, archived online. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I renew my motion.
Chairman Reagan renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1724 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted. Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 90, no nays.
Senate Bill 1724 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. Motion to reconsider is tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1713 by Speaker Pro Tem Marsh, relative to Utility Management Review Board. Mr. Speaker, Senate bills on the desk.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1812.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh moves to substitute to conform to Senate Bill 1812 without objection. So ordered. Speaker Pro Tem Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1812 on third and final consideration.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh moves passage of Senate Bill 1812 on third and final consideration. Properly second. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill is from the Comptroller's Office, and this bill will make government work better by allowing the Utility Management Review Board, the UMRB, to initiate either a consolidation or a merger among utility districts that benefit the ratepayers of a financially distressed district. Before the UMRB can finalize the merger, one, a feasibility study must be completed that recommends the merger. Number two, a public hearing should be conducted in the financially distressed district. And third, the UMRB must make a determination that the merger is in the best interest of the ratepayers. With that, I'll renew my motion.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, sponsor. I'm just, based on what you said, this is intended to reduce rates for payers. Can you explain how the state is going to get $2 million more under the fiscal note? Where's that money coming from if the rates are going down for ratepayers?
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh.
There is in the governor's budget $2 million to help with this. We've got like 30 distressed districts in the state, and this is shouldn't raise any rates. If a distressed district wants to join a not distressed district, they can. The one that is in good shape does not have to take them, but this $2 million will help with the upfront money and some of the work that has to be done before they can combine. Hopefully the rates will not go up.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Okay, I was just curious why the revenue is going to increase by $2 million, but I'll figure it out. Thank you.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh.
They're putting the money in there to use if they need it. It just will help these distressed districts to get on their feet and join a non-distressed district.
Any further discussion? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1812 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, any member wish to change the vote? Grills, aye. Cochran, aye. Hardaway, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays.
Senate Bill 1812 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed. I object to the motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1449 by Chairman Curcio and others relative to criminal justice.
Chairman Curcio, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 1449 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Curcio moves passage. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment Number 1.
Vice Chairman Sexton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment makes the bill, move adoption, and I defer to the sponsor for explanation.
Vice Chairman Sexton moves adoption of amendment number 1. Probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt it. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further.
Chairman Curcio, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Chairman Curcio renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 1449 as amended vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Ms. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 81, 7 nays, 1 present, not voting.
House Bill 1449 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed. I object to the motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2196 by Chairman Kiesling relative to transfer tax.
Chairman Kiesling, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2196 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Kiesling moves passage. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Finance, Ways and Means Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chair Lady Hazelwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment does rewrite the bill, and I move to adopt.
Chair Lady Hazelwood moves adoption of amendment number 1. Properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt it. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Kiesling, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2196, the intent of the bill is to remedy a situation in which one refuses to record a document or to pay the transfer tax on a quitclaim warranty deed despite the Department of Rev's rule. There have been many instances where people have refused to pay their transfer tax, citing the fact that is not a mandate in our code. The registers are seeking to change that to further avoid any similar instances from happening again. Mr. Speaker and members, I must say that there's been much cooperation between our Tennessee County Officials Association, Register of Deeds Association, even as well as our land title folks. So there's been a collaboration, and this has all been worked out with them. And I also want to personally say a thank you to our Cheatham County Register there, Mr. Patrick Smith, who was entrenched in this and really gave it all its support, and we appreciate him for that. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I'll renew my motion and entertain any questions they have from the members.
Chairman Keesling renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 2196 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Alexander, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 90, no nays.
House Bill 2196 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed. Without objection, motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2063 by Representative Manis, Railroad and Homestead exemptions. Mr. Speaker, Senate bills on the desk.
Representative Manis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2015.
Representative Manis moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2015 without objection. So ordered. Representative Manis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2015 on third and final consideration.
Representative Manis moves passage of Senate Bill 2015 on third and final consideration. Bob second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Manis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill amends Tennessee's probate statutes to remedy an omission made in the legislation adopted in 2021, increasing the amount of the homestead exemption. In 2021, the General Assembly passed Public Chapter 301 that increased Tennessee's homestead exemption amount from $5,000 to $35,000. This bill simply corrects the amount for the homestead exemption in probate proceedings so that it reflects the amount that the General Assembly has already adopted in 2021, which was intended to be generally applicable. Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Manis renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2015, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Ogles, aye. Kumar, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
Senate Bill 2015 have received a constitutional majority. I hereby declare passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2443 by Chairman Farmer and others relative to forcible entry and detainer.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2443 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Farmer moves passage. Poppy seconded. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, what this bill does, under present law, in cases where an action has been brought by a landlord to recover possession of leased premises from a tenant on the grounds that a tenant has breached the contract by failing to pay rent, and then a judgment is entered in favor of the landlord, the tenant appeals the judgment, then the tenant must execute a bond, post a cash deposit or a revocable letter of credit from a financial institution, or provide two good personal sureties with sufficient security in the amount of 1 year's rent. What this does, this extends it and makes it applicable to all appeals by the tenant. So say, for example, if they're in the home and they're using drugs or making meth or doing something like that, and any other violation in that lease, which they agree to, then they're going to have to post that same appeals bond as if they were for just rent. I don't know why it was just covered under rent, but there's many other things that tenants breach, and it's not fair for those folks to be able to sit there and occupy that property rent-free for a period of time. So this corrects that, makes everything fair and equitable for that property owner, and I renew my motion, Mr. Speaker.
Chairman Farmer renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker Sexton. To the sponsor, just for further clarification, if the lease conditions no matter what it is, are we including all of the violations that would have taken the individual to court and saying each of those, if it results in eviction, that an appeal would require that bond? We aren't creating a new bond. We're just saying that the conditions of the lease, each of those conditions will be treated equally.
Chairman Farmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And you are correct, Representative Hardaway. That's a fair and accurate representation of what this bill does. It treats every violation as the same.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, sponsor.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 2443 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change the vote? Ogles, aye. Ms. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 73, 15 nays, 3 present, non-voting.
House Bill 2443 have received constitutional majority. I hereby declare passed. Without objection, the motion reads is table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2223 by Chairman Powers, relative to voting. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Powers, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2107.
Chairman Powers moves substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2107. Proper second. Without objection, so ordered. Chairman Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2107 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Powers moves passage of Senate Bill 2107 on third and final consideration. Proper second. Mr. Clerk, call the first amendment, please.
House Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Halford, you're recognized. Oh, at Hicks of Hawkins' desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment rewrites the bill. I move for adoption and defer to the sponsor for an explanation.
Chairman Halford moves adoption of amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of House Amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Powers, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2223 is being brought because of issues with wakeboarding and wake surfing on Tennessee lakes. They're causing disruption to other boaters, fishermen, lake houses, lake bank erosion, small docks and marinas, including instances of personal injury. The language of the bill is agreed upon by a solution that we came up with the Water Sports Industry Association and TWRA. This bill clearly defines what wakeboarding and wake surfing are, and it sets the parameters for wakeboarding and wake surfing, such as they're prohibited after sunset and before sunrise, prohibited on a body of water less than 50 acres in size, prohibited without wearing a personal flotation device approved by the U.S. Coast Guard, and most importantly, it prohibits wakeboarding and wake surfing within 200 feet of any shoreline, dock, pier, or any other structure located completely or partly on the water. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Powers renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2107 as amended vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 88, 1 nay.
Senate Bill 2107 has received a constitutional majority. I hereby declare passed. Without objection, the motion reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2623 by Chairman Powers, relative to visitation rights.
Chairman Powers, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I make a motion to hold House Bill 2623 on the desk.
Without objection, hold on the desk. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2070 by Representative Leatherwood and others, relative to children.
Representative Leatherwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2070 on third and final consideration.
Representative Leatherwood moves passage. Following second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Civil Justice Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment rewrites the bill and move to adopt.
Chairman Farmer moves adoption of amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Leatherwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill was brought to me by the Tennessee Bar Association, their adoption section. It's mainly a cleanup bill, but it does add conviction for certain offenses, specifically the offense of aggravated sexual exploitation of a minor, to the offenses that a judge can look at when determining parental rights. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Leatherwood renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 2070 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
House Bill 2070, having received constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed. Without objection, motion to reconsider is tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2653 by Representative Clemens relative to Tennessee Community Gardening Act. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on this.
Representative Clemens, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2515.
Representative Clemens moves to substitute conform to Senate Bill 2515 without objection. So ordered. Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2515 on third and final consideration.
Representative Clemens moves passage of Senate Bill 2515 on third and final consideration. Second, Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Clemens, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, you probably recall a few weeks ago I stood up and recognized a young lady who passed away prematurely at the age of 42. She ran, her name was Toulouse Schuyler Quinn. You were all nice enough to pass a resolution honoring her life. Well, she ran a organization called the Nashville Food Project. And this food project not only connects communities with food, and they run a community garden here in Nashville, but they feed over 5,000 individuals a week and connect the community to food and address those issues. They brought this legislation to me, and what this legislation does is it adds and provides some clarification to the definition of vacant public land in the Tennessee Community Gardening Act. As you recall, we passed this bill, I believe, unanimously a few years ago. It was introduced by Senator Nicely and Representative G.A. Hardaway of our body. And so what this legislation would do is just provide some clarity to the definition of vacant public land, to clarify that it includes property controlled by a Parks and Recreation Department or similar entity that is not currently being used as parkland. This will continue to in furtherance of the Community Gardening Act that we adopted. And Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Clemens renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Reedy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Clemens. I do appreciate this bill. I know that those more urban districts that we have, there's folks that like to get out and do the gardening and vegetable gardening. I appreciate this piece of legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Representative Lynn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Representative, I appreciate this bill very, very much, and I just wanted a clarification so that I can communicate to my constituents. Does this include land that's already cleared, such as green space area, or would it be only subject to shrubbed or wooded land that is in a park?
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So this vacant public land means any land owned by a local government that is not in use for public purposes, and now would include, to clarify, property controlled by a Parks and Recreation Department or similar entity that's not currently being used as parkland. So it would follow, to answer your question, it would fall under any type of land. There are several restrictions currently in the code with regards to this under Chapter 24. And there's an entire process that goes through whereby locals have complete control over saying yes or no, requiring permits, regulating the use for it, insurance issues. So local governments have complete control. This just clarifies that public parkland can be used as well.
Representative Land.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good bill. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. and thank you to the sponsor. In essence, the question that the previous speaker was asking, this just offers more land to be eligible. It does not force the issue. It doesn't mandate the issue. Local folks and the current regulations still kick in if they don't want it done.
Representative Clemens.
Yes, that's exactly right, Representative Hardaway. And I would add, under the bill that you passed, there's express language in section 104 of that bill that says it is the policy of the state to encourage community gardening on both public and private property. And to that end, this chapter shall be liberally construed. So we're just providing clarification to how much land can be. But as you, with your foresight, you put in that piece of legislation, extensive regulations giving local governments control and discretion as to what land could be used in a very laid out and thoughtful manner.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you. And I'll just remind all of the members that if we're going to tackle economic issues, educational issues, and nutritional and health issues, then urban gardening is an excellent way to begin that task. So I thank the sponsor for the bill.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate that. And your passage of that legislation originally was truly significant and has made a direct positive impact in thousands of lives, specifically those impacted by the Nashville Food Project and many others. And many of us in this room, I had the opportunity to grow up on a farm and have that connection with where food comes from and raise livestock. And I know many of you have and still do. And not everyone has that opportunity. So this really opens a door for a lot of individuals to have that connection to food sources and get the ability to learn how to grow food and provide for themselves and their community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Representative Weaver.
Mr. Speaker, and I would just like to ask the sponsor, do you grow a garden?
Representative Clemens.
I do.
Representative Weaver.
And what is your favorite thing to grow in the garden?
Representative Clemens.
Mine is grapevine. I have grapevines, and I really enjoy that. But I really love onions, so we have a lot of onions.
Didn't see that one coming. Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Call for the previous question.
Previous question has been called. Any objection? I don't see enough hands. We're ready. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2515, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member cast their vote, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
Senate Bill 2515 having received constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion reeks there is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2857 by Chairman Kumar, relative to Central Service Technicians.
Chairman Kumar, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2857 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Kumar moves passage. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Health Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to adopt.
Chairman Terry moves adoption amendment number 1. Properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Kumar, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill deals with qualifications of central service technicians. I renew my motion.
Chairman Kumar renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 2857 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 90, no nays.
House Bill 2587 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion reeks here is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2858 by Chairman Kumar, relative to COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, Senate bills on the desk.
Chairman Kumar, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1789.
Chairman Kumar moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1789 without objection. So ordered. Chairman Kumar, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1789 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Kumar moves passage of Senate Bill 1789 on third and final consideration. Poppy second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Kumar, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Chairman Kumar renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. To the sponsor, this merely does technical corrections in the titles, et cetera. Doesn't change policy, does it?
Chairman Kumar.
That is true, Representative Hardaway. These are technical corrections to the previous House Bill 9077 we passed. Certain language in the CMS vocabulary that belongs only to the hospital part got included in the physician part, and this corrects that.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you. Thank you, Speaker.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1789 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 89, no nays.
Senate Bill 1789 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed. Without objection, motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Joint Resolution 679 by Leader Lambert and others, a resolution to confirm the appointment of Jordan Mullenhour of Knoxville to the State Board of Education. Mr. Speaker, it was previously considered and reset for today's regular calendar.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to substitute House Joint Resolution 679 for Senate Joint Resolution 856.
Leader Lambert moves to substitute House Joint Resolution 679 for Senate Joint Resolution 856 without objection. So ordered. Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to concurrent Senate Joint Resolution 856.
Leader Lambert moves to concur in Senate Joint Resolution 856. Properly seconded. Ms. Clerk, call First Amendments.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Leader Lambert renews his motion. Any discussion? Representative Mitchell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, sponsor, could you give me any educational background on this gentleman that we're appointing?
Leader Lambert.
Yes, sir. As is indicated in the resolution, Mr. Mullenhour holds a Bachelor of Business Administration degree from the University of Tennessee, go Vols, a Master of Business Administration degree from the University of Tennessee, a Doctor of Jurisprudence degree from the University of Tennessee College of Law, and a Master of Business Administration degree from the University of Pennsylvania, the Wharton School. He also serves his community extraordinarily well as a board member of Trinity Health Foundation, East Tennessee Historical Society, Knoxville Science Museum, and he's a trustee at City Hills Church and a member of the University of Tennessee Anderson Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation Board of Advisors. I will tell you, he is a person of very high integrity. He's a seventh generation Tennessean. He began his work as his career at age 12 and started his first business at 16. Very accomplished individual, extremely dedicated to his community and to education in our state, and would make a phenomenal appointment to the state school board.
Representative Mitchell.
Well, Mr. Leader, several years ago, I worked for a governor, and I was responsible for boards and commissions. And every month, I'd have to go into a conference room with that governor with a list of potential appointees for several boards and commissions. And it was my responsibility to do a background check, make sure there was nothing, any criminal activity in their past or any blaring, just anything that out of the ordinary for any appointee. And I can tell you, if I walked into that conference room and slid this appointment across that table to that governor and didn't tell him, I knew better than to bring something in there that had this kind of background on it, Because, you can say it's unfortunate, maybe even unlucky, probably bad choice of terms with the name of the company, to be involved in one mass shooting. But I think it may be reckless when you're involved in 2 mass shootings in this country. I know we have a lot of mass shootings in the country all the time, but to be involved in 2 of them, that's a little bit beyond being unlucky. And from what I'm seeing from the resume, the only educational experience is a school shooting. And I really don't think that should be someone to be part of our state school board when that's in your background. I'm looking for someone who's looking for the security and safety of our children as well as their education. So, if you can prove me wrong, please do. But this is highly troubling to me.
Leader Lambert.
Sir, we've been friends for years, and I respect you. What you have just stated on this House floor is beneath you. It is reprehensible to insinuate in some way that this good gentleman, because he owns a portion of an ammunition company, that some evil person misused that ammunition to kill American citizens, that you would somehow lay it at his feet. Every single time a car dealer sells a car that a drunk driver uses to kill someone, we do not go after the owner of that car dealership. If a person sells enough ammunition, there will be an evil person that misuses it. It does not mean that the person that operated their business to the best of their ability should somehow be culpable in that. And to insinuate, as you just did without telling the rest of the story, again, my friend, is beneath you and beneath this chamber. So yes, sir, he owns several businesses and one of them sells ammunition. And ammunition apparently was utilized improperly, evilly, wrongly, criminally. But it is not the fault of the individual that happens to own a portion of that company. So yes, sir, he is extraordinarily qualified for the position he's up for. And if you hate the Second Amendment so bad you want to ban ammunition, bring that bill.
Out of order. Representative Mitchell.
Well, it's not beneath the court systems in the United States of America, thank God. So, but I'm sorry, we're to the point where I'm the pariah for having the audacity to question something that is so extreme and out of the ordinary that so many citizens have died in this country. Like I said, one time, that's an accident. When it happens multiple times, you start questioning it. And if you want to defend things like this and more mass shootings in this country and more school shootings, like I said, I wouldn't have slid this appointment across the table to a previous governor because I know what the answer would have been and I know what he would have said to me, why I was out of my mind even bringing something to him like that. Thank you.
Leader Lambert.
Thank you for your comments, sir. I appreciate your perspective as always. I stand on my previous comments, and sir, I didn't slide anything by you. I stand before you with my name at the top of this and ready to present it and ask questions. Nobody slid anything.
Representative Mitchell.
I don't think I said you slid anything. I said I think I was speaking of when I worked previously. So don't take my words out of context.
Representative Reagan, you're recognized. What's your point of order?
Sir, I request the running debate be censored.
All right. Representative Johnson and Knox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sorry, folks. I want to read something. Your children will go to public school and they will be trained for somewhere around 15,000 hours in ungodly secular thought. And then they'll go to Sunday school and they'll color a picture of Noah's Ark And you think that's going to stand against the lies that they are being told? This is a post by Jordan Mollenauer's wife on social media. We know that they homeschool their children. We know how they feel about someone who is hostile to public schools enough to call teachers in Tennessee liars. You know, teachers teach kids how to think, not what to think. We teach kids facts. I don't think facts are ungodly. I think God likes the truth. And the reality is, Mr. Mollenauer has a lack of experience with our public education system. To my knowledge, his only experience with education is selling ammunition to an underage school shooter, and which is illegal. And also, perhaps the idea, which my colleague didn't state, when your family has donated $15,000 to the governor, I'm not sure this is really the look that we want. I don't see qualifications for the State Board of Ed in this individual. A lot of qualifications he may have, but I don't see it for this. And certainly not someone that is hostile towards our public schools and our public teachers.
Leader Lambert.
So now we're going to go there. Again, respect your opinion, but a post by the gentleman's wife has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not he should be appointed. I appreciate you bringing it up. That's fine. But Mr. Jordan Mollenauer is up for an appointment today. And I actually have quite a few homeschool folks in my district. I support my public schools, my home schools, our charter schools, our private schools. I support all aspects of education. And in fact, on the state school board, as you know, they do have a hand in approving certain curriculum for homeschool students as well. So to exclude homeschool students and parents from the entire equation, again, I would humbly disagree with, and trying to twist someone who's up for an appointment, their spouse's comment on social media simply isn't relevant to this. But again, I respect your perspective on it. And if you don't like homeschool parents and students, that's on you, not on me.
Representative Johnson and Knox.
And here we go with twisting people's words again. I also have friends who homeschool. I support homeschooling. I also think that someone on a state board of ed should have experience, with considerable experience with our public school system. I don't have a problem with that. And yes, when you are homeschooling your kids, how your family feels about public education, it's pretty clear from their actions that he feels the same way as well.
Representative Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, many people will stand up on this House floor to speak about Jordan Mollenauer, but very few people on this floor, I would say maybe just a couple of us, have ever had a conversation with him. Jordan is my constituent. I know Jordan well. I have served with Jordan in many capacities. We could not find a better Tennessean to represent us on any board. He is a leader. He is an extremely successful business owner. He's a philanthropist, very giving, very generous to the Knoxville community, is engaged in statewide charity engagements, and he is an asset to us. And he absolutely is a supporter of Bill Lee. He supports our governor, as many of us do, and he is engaged in the process. And I appreciate his engagement because he has an engagement and a level of support for what we do in this state that many don't have. And he puts his resources and he puts his time behind it. And so again, many of you will stand up and disparage him, but I know him personally, have known him sometime. I know his character and who he is as a person. And again, whatever board it may be nominated for, he is an asset to anything that we do moving this state forward. And I appreciate you bringing this, and I appreciate the nomination and the support of the governor. Thank you.
Leader Lambert. Nope. Representative Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Here's my confusion. How many, do you all know the board composition between men and women? I'm looking at the website. Looks like it's 11 members of the board. You got 2 women, 9 men. Is that correct?
Leader Lambert.
Sir, I actually don't have a bias toward anyone based on their gender, ethnicity, or background, so I have not actually checked the demographics of all aspects of the board.
Representative Stewart.
Well, that's what, I mean, I'm looking at the website. That's what it seems to be. And it's confusing to me why the governor has appointed a man instead of a woman, because, you know, the code that creates the Board of Education set it up so that the appointments would be made so that there be an even distribution between men and women on the board. In other words, the board was to be created and it was to be filled with people of both sexes, quote, until the membership of the board reflects the percentage of females in the population generally. Now, looking at this code sentence, I think lawyers could argue whether that imposes today a requirement that the board reflect the composition of the state. That's for a lawsuit, which I assume will be filed. I'm just trying to figure out why it is we're appointing another man to this board when clearly there was a legislative intent to have a board that properly reflected men and women in the state of Tennessee. Could we not find one qualified woman to be on the Board of Education? Is there not one in the entire state of Tennessee that the Lee administration could find?
Leader Lambert.
Thank you, sir. I can't imagine that you would be opposed to a candidate for any appointment based on their gender. It sounds as if you are, but again, he's a very qualified candidate, has extremely good credentials, and was chosen based on those credentials without any partiality toward gender, ethnicity, or religion, background. Was simply chosen on those credentials. I support the fact that we need a very diverse state school board and look forward to, quite frankly, all of these appointments and future appointments, ensuring that we have the diversity on that board that is needed to make sure that we have both diverse opinions and individuals.
Representative Stewart.
Well, and I think probably this is something that a lawsuit will have to resolve in terms of whether or not we're violating our statutory obligation. I'll leave that to the lawyers down the road, wanted to highlight it. But with respect to diversity, I guess I question that, because here we have an opportunity to start rebalancing the board so that school girls can look at the Board of Education of the state of Tennessee and see women who are taking a leadership role. It's bizarre to me that at this point, with such a lopsided board, we've reached down to find another man instead of a woman. Now, obviously, this particular selection is totally inexperienced. It's basically an avowed enemy of the public schools, doesn't believe in public education, and couldn't be less qualified to serve. But that's a different issue. I'm just trying to figure out why the Lee administration didn't find a woman when there's a statutory directive that we have a board balanced between men and women. And we have such a lopsided situation. Again, could the Lee administration not find a single qualified woman to participate on the primary board governing education in our state? To me, this is a bizarre selection. I can't believe in this day and age we're even having this discussion.
Leader Lambert.
Thank you. And sir, I'll forgive you if you haven't attended very many state school board meetings, but Miss Lillian Hartgrove is the chairman of the state school board. So just for what it's worth, my daughter and other young girls in this state definitely have a phenomenal lady to look up to there in that position, and she literally is the chairman.
Representative Stewart.
Well, as any chairman of a corporate board will tell you, or any person who buys stock in boards, what matters is who controls the board. And the point is, the fact that a woman happens to be a chairman right now doesn't change the policy that this legislature put in, which clearly indicates an intent that boys and girls look up to men and women evenly distributed on the school board. So I just think the fact that we're selecting a man now, I mean, it really clearly defies what was intended when the board was created. And it's just bad policy. I don't know why we'd be doing it. I have a feeling it would take me 15 minutes looking around on my phone to find 10 highly qualified women to serve on the State Board of Education. And I tell Governor Lee, I'm available for that service in the future if he continues to struggle filling these boards with the proper members.
That was out of order. Leader Lambert.
Representative, the executive director also happens to be a lady. Again, I don't see the world through that lens to try to be discriminatory toward anyone based on their sex, their gender, their ethnicity, their religion. You, sir, may want to go down that road, but we have strong leadership on the state school board, and your argument may work for other boards, but it simply doesn't work, and we're here over this one appointment.
Representative Manis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I can't stand here and listen to this conversation. And Mr. Leader, thank you for bringing this forward. Jordan Mollenauer, I've known Jordan Mollenauer for many years now, and he and I have had many conversations. And his love and passion for education, I will put it up against anyone's in this chamber, in the chamber across the hall, or in the Capitol. He may have homeschooled his kids, but he has already had numerous conversations with school board members. And the fact that Jordan could be tied or misrepresented as having a part in a mass shooting makes me very angry that would even be a characterization that was put on him. You will not find a better candidate than Jordan Mollenauer. It's not Jordan Mollenauer's issue about the representation and the makeup of male versus female on the board. We are not discussing that with Jordan Mollenauer. So thank you again, and I can assure you that you will not be disappointed for bringing this.
Representative Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Call for previous question.
Previous question has been called. Any objection? Seeing none, we are voting. All those in favor of Senate Joint Resolution 856 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
71, 14 nays, one present, not voting.
Senate Joint Resolution 856, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare concurred in without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2067 by Chairman Halsey, relative to recognize minor parties.
Chairman Halsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2067 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Halsey moves passage, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Local Government Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment rewrites a section of the bill. I move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for further explanation.
Chairman Crawford moves adoption of amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted it. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Halsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under current law, if you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent, which an independent, of course, doesn't tell what you are, it tells what you're not. Says you're not a Democrat or a Republican, but nobody knows what you are. But under current law, if you want to run in a race for governor or anything else in this state, all you got to get is 25 signatures. If you're a minor party, like a Green Party or Constitution Party or Libertarian Party or any other minor party, if you want to get that little letter beside your name on the ballot, under existing law, if you're running for governor, where you have to get 25 signatures, they have to get 56,083. Now, to put that in my county, the last gubernatorial race, there's 55,000 people voted in Sullivan County. Under existing law, I have to get 25 signatures. If somebody wants to run under a minor party and get that little letter beside their name, under existing law, they have to get 1,500 signatures. So what this bill does, it doesn't make it equal, even though our Constitution says in Article 1, Section 5, that our elections shall be free and equal. That's what it says. This bill doesn't make it equal. It just makes it more attainable. Because it says instead of getting 2.5% of the last total votes in the governor's race, you just have to get 0.5. How does that translate in my county? Well, as I told you before, I just have to get 25 signatures. If you pass this bill in my county and somebody runs on a minor party, they would have to get 300. Now, that varies from county to county based on how many people voted. But my adjoining district, Representative Campbell, his district touches 3 counties. So he has to get 0.5% of all 3 of those counties collectively, which means that he would have to get 25 signatures. If somebody ran on a minor party in his counties, they would have to get 500. So this bill lowers from 2.5 to 0.5 the number of signatures that you have to have. It also sets the retention for the next election cycle from 5% to 1%. In other words, under existing law, you have to get 5% of the vote to get your name with your little moniker on there at the next cycle of elections. This lowers that to 1%. And the last thing it does, it changes the threshold to kick off a primary race from 5% to 25%. And that keeps the physical note off of it and doesn't cost taxpayers anything. So, again, does it make things equal? But it makes them more attainable. And so, with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Holsley renews his motion. Any discussion? Representative Powell.
Thank you. Just wanted to say I've actually brought similar legislation in previous years, and obviously I stand up. I'm a member of the Democratic Party. I know you're a member of the Republican Party, but ultimately I think in our nation we're getting away from general elections, and unfortunately so many elections are decided in the primaries. And I think it's critical that we have people that can run, even though I might not agree with them, for whatever party they feel like they or belong to or a part of. I think it's good for both Republicans and Democrats to keep ourselves honest. You know, there's a growing number of independents in this country, and quite frankly, that's because people are becoming dissatisfied with both parties being so polarized. And we've lost people, I firmly believe, in the middle who want to create good legislation, good laws, and compromise. And anything I think that we can do in this country to bring ourselves closer together as a nation, to come up with common sense solutions, and not just be overly partisan in the way we go about governing, is critical. And so I think the ability for these minor political parties is a small step in the right direction. I don't know why we would restrict somebody who believes they're a member of a certain party and wants to run as under a certain party. They should have that right and not just be labeled as an independent. You know, there's other states, and in the presidential election, you'll see other parties that run in other states and have very credible organizations behind them. I think some of these elections, you know, especially at the presidential level, you've seen third-party candidates have backing, have helped move some of the Republican and Democratic candidates more to the center. So I appreciate you doing this, and I think it's right for democracy in the state of Tennessee. Thank you.
Representative Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Sponsor, you know you are one of my favorite legislators, but I rise in not in support of your bill. I am going to vote against this bill. One of the things I like to know, especially with a bill like this, is why so many years ago this General Assembly decided to pass this law in the first place. And we don't know. We don't know why they did that. But we do know this, that in this day and age, Our republic has never been more attacked by socialism and communism than any other time in history. And we do know that they did decide to say only the Democrat Party and the Republican Party and independents can be on the ballot with just 25 signatures. The Republican Party name clearly states republic. That party is about our republic. Even the Democrat Party name clearly states or signifies democracy, that they are in support of democracy. With this bill, lowering the threshold for other parties to get on the ballot, such as the Socialist Party, such as the Communist Party, I have no doubt that they will venture to put a candidate on the ballot in every single race that they can. And maybe they won't get many votes in the next election or the election after that. But I do fear that it would be a slippery slope to changing the voters in this country. We know the Republican Party is about our republic. The Democrat Party, their name implies democracy. We have seen George Soros fund district attorney candidates all over this country. Some of our greatest cities are ruined by injustice because those candidates won in those cities, and they have literally been ruined. And the people who deserve justice have not received it. And that's what happens when you have people who don't understand American government, who don't believe in our Constitution, running and also supporting candidates. So I will not be supporting this legislation. Those are my reasons. I don't expect that everybody has similar reasons for supporting it or not supporting it. I really, really don't. I'm not making any implication. But I did just want to let you know my reasons because I respect you so much. Thank you.
Chairman Holsey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You very well may be right. Socialist organization might muster up a candidate and go on the ballot, get enough signatures, which would be a lot of signatures, even if you pass this bill. I'm concerned just as much about Marxism and Leninism and socialism being taught at taxpayers' dime in some of the universities in this state. And we need to address that. But the other side of that is, I think no matter who runs against you, no matter what access they got to a ballot, to have their little moniker beside their name, we ought to be in a place where we believe that our platform and our position, what we believe, what we stand for, what we say we believe, is solid enough to win. Thank you.
Representative Towns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sponsor yield.
Chairman Holsey.
Mr. Representative, as you were explaining the bill, help me to calculate or tabulate, if you will, that 25% figure that you gave on the last part of your conversation. Thank you.
Chairman Holsey.
Okay, under existing law right now, what would trigger a primary, a forced primary, would be 5% if you won 5% of the vote. That triggers a primary. This ups that to 25%, says you have to have 25% of the vote to trigger a primary, which would keep minor parties out of a primary. I mean, that's the whole purpose of it.
Representative Towns.
Mr. Representative, thank you. That makes more sense. Thank you, sir.
Representative Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'm going to say something that's going to be very shocking to you. We have almost 7 million Tennesseans and a massive majority of people who are registered to vote that don't vote because they don't identify with the two parties. We've got Democrats, we've got Republicans. That's shocking to me because I think they should agree with my party. And I think some on the Democrat side think they should agree with their party. The founder, the father of our country, George Washington, did his best to steer us away from a party system because he didn't think it was the best for the country. So on a bill like this, I think about how the framers were looking at it, and I think how we can get more people engaged. Now, on the conservative side of politics, we believe that competition drives the market. We believe that when competition's out there, it makes the final product the best for the consumer. So I support this legislation because if it does bring competition to either one of these political parties, that means we have to have a better product in the end. The person who has the best product is going to sell. It's wrong for us to think that we get to control everything, and then this other majority of people who'd like to have a voice can't even come up to the table. Here's the deal. I believe that my party has proven to America and the world that the Republicans are getting it right in Tennessee. If there's an area that we're not getting right at it, bring the competition on because we're going to continue to prove who we are. So, Mr. Sponsor, I support that because I support the notion of freedom and identifying with whatever party and being able to have the competition that makes the final product the better product for the consumer.
Chairman Holsey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just as a matter of information, over the history of the state of Tennessee, there have been 40 minor parties that have played significant roles in this state in its history.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move previous question.
Previous question be called. Any objection? Seeing none. We are voting. All those in favor of House Bill 2067 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 47, 35 nays, 5 present, not voting.
House Bill 2067 having failed to receive a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it re-referred to the Committee of Calendar and Rules. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that completes the regular calendar.
Next calendar, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the House has a message calendar.
Call it first message, Mr. Clerk.
Senate Bill 1787 by Chairman Halsey and others relative to county officers. Mr. Speaker, on March 10th, 2022, the Senate non-concurred in House Amendment number 1.
Chairman Halsey. Chairman Halsey. You're good. Chairman Halsey, you're recognized.
I was so overwhelmed by my defeat. I'm sorry. We passed a bill on this side that said if a constable gets indicted or arrested, that the criminal court judge in that county will put him out of service and off duty till the results of the trial are adjudicated. The Senate put an amendment on it that takes all that out, waters it down, and makes it permissive. And so if that's the case, there's no point in having the bill. So, Mr. Speaker, I move that we refuse to recede from our action in adopting Amendment 1.
Without objection, we refuse to recede. Next message, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that completes the message calendar.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Unfinished business.
Unfinished business. One moment. Hey, members, while we're waiting on that, I will just tell you, if you watch Calendar and Rules today, you'll see that there's a lot more bills going through Calendar and Rules, which means that there'll be more bills. We'll be maximum on Mondays. We will be maximum on Thursdays, which means do not be expecting to be out here before noon on Thursdays at the earliest. And then we'll be going back on Wednesdays morning here very soon in the next week or two at the latest. Just wanted to let you know. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, we have some messages from the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I'm directed to return to the House Bill 563, substitute for the Senate bill on the same subject, amended and passed by the Senate.
Monday's message calendar. Mr. Clerk.
Message from the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I'm directed to return to the House Bill 1843, substituted for the Senate bill on the same subject, amended and passed by the Senate.
Monday's message calendar. Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The next several of these motions, members, are on several bills that many of you went to the committee chairman. I've discussed it with the minority leader, and all are in agreement to put these in committee for next week. So with that, Mr. Speaker, move that House Bill 2290 be heard in the Health Subcommittee next week.
You've heard the motion. Any objection? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that House Bills 2152 and 2184 be heard in the Government Operations Committee next week.
You've heard the motion. Any objection? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that HJR 973 and HJR 974 be heard in the Commerce Committee next week.
You've heard the motion. Any objection? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that House Bill 1210 be heard in the Education Administration Committee next week.
You've heard the motion. Any objection? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that House Bill 2516 be heard in the Finance Subcommittee next week.
You've heard the motion. Any objection? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that House Bill 2307 be heard in the Children and Family Affairs Subcommittee next week.
You've heard the motion. Any objection? Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Announcements.
Announcements. Anyone with announcements? Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know I'm out of order. I didn't realize we had a special guest in the chamber when we were welcoming and honor our own employee of the year. Tyler Munez is here. Tyler, where are you? Are you over here to my left? He has a very special guest with him that I would like to recognize, his daughter, Paisley. So please give her a great welcome to the House of Representatives today. Welcome, Paisley. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, the Joint Government Operations Committee will hold our monthly rule review this upcoming Monday, the 21st at 1 p.m. in House Hearing Room 1. That will be followed by our full House Government Operations Committee meeting at 1:30 p.m. Again, rule review, House Hearing Room 1 at 1 p.m. Regular House Government Operations Committee at 1:30, same room. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to let the House know that Tuesday, March 22nd is our Ag Day. It'll begin at 8 o'clock with a contest at 9:30. We'll have a special Ag Committee meeting at 10:30, and then we'll have a brisket barbecue and chicken for lunch starting at 11:30. So y'all be sure to participate this coming Tuesday, the 22nd. And I believe there's a contest that you're going to be participating in. Make sure your hands are warm.
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hey, Republican caucus, please stay when we return. We're going to come up here and get a group picture. So please stay here and come to the well when we adjourn.
Representative Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, the Business and Utility Subcommittee finished our final calendar yesterday. We have concluded our business for the year, and we have closed down subject to the call of the chair.
Representative Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to announce that the Banking and Consumer Affairs Subcommittee finished our final calendar, and we closed yesterday, and we have received a 5-star rating on Yelp.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, members, I know I'm out of order, but I'd like to acknowledge 2 young ladies that's visiting on spring break Adrian and Alyssa Reese, if you all would stand and make them feel welcome.
Representative Halsey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tuesday is the last final meeting of Corrections Subcommittee. There is a change in time. We will meet at 3 p.m. instead of 4:30 p.m.
Representative Hazelwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Two announcements, if you don't mind, one out of order. I believe that somewhere in the gallery, we may have a visitor from Hamilton County from Senator Watson's constituency, Dave Swinert. If he's here, please make him welcome. And also just a traffic announcement. Someone sent me a text that I-24 is closed both directions near Laverne because of an overturned tanker truck. So any of you who might be going home that way may want to find another route.
Representative Haston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. K-12 sub will be meeting at 3 o'clock on Tuesday rather than 4:30.
Representative Holtzclaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it gives me great pleasure to inform this body that Department of Agency Subcommittee has completed its business. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I too would like to announce that the Ag and Natural Resources Subcommittee has had its final calendar and is closed, subject to the call of the chair.
Very good. Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker Sexton. I'm going to ask that we reconsider our actions on House Bill 2067.
Yeah. Representative Hardaway, that's already been referred to calendar and rules. That is out of order. Representative Hardaway.
Is that a ruling by the clerk?
If you want it to be, it can be. You want to hear from the clerk?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, our rules state that if a bill fails to receive a constitutional majority, that it will be re-referred to calendar and rules, and that it cannot be considered on the floor again for this session unless 2/3 of calendar and rules sends it back to the floor.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. I would ask that the clerk would speak to the steps for reconsideration. While in this particular situation, I'm well aware of what it takes to get the bill back on the floor. But while we're still here, the reconsideration of the bill is what I'm asking them for.
Mr. Clerk, you want to try again?
Mr. Speaker, the body cannot reconsider the bill at this time because pursuant to our rules, it has been re-referred to calendar and rules. So calendar and rules is in possession of that bill. It is not in possession of the floor at this time.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. I was under the impression from past dealings that until that bill left here, that it was still under the authority of the House. And I would ask the clerk, am I right or wrong on that?
Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to our rules, the Speaker has re-referred that bill to calendar and rules. That is where the bill resides, is with the Calendar and Rules Committee.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm going to respectfully disagree that my question is being addressed because I'm asking whether the bill is still here or not, and what are the rules that govern when a bill has actually left our authority. Is it after the vote? Is it after we have recess for the day?
Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, I will read the rule directly. When any bill or resolution is voted upon but fails to receive a constitutional majority, the same shall be automatically referred to the Committee on Calendar and Rules. It is no longer before the full body. It is in the Calendar and Rules Committee. And this rule says it shall automatically be sent, and that's what the Speaker has done.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. And that takes into the consideration the step of reconsideration?
Mr. Clerk.
It makes that a moot issue?
Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that's correct. The rules state that this body cannot consider that bill again unless it's called for by a favorable vote of 2/3 of the member of Calendar and Rules.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. I'll still respectfully disagree with the interpretation of that rule, but thank you for taking the time to address it. Thank you, Clerk, also.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Roll call.
Roll call. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 88 members present.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
That completes the regular order, Mr. Speaker.
Leader Gant, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess until 5 p.m. on Monday, March 21st, 2022.
Without objection, the House stands recessed till 5 p.m. on Monday, March 21st, 2022.